I'm Capital Television's Dave Barber, coming to you this day from the lounge of the Rhode Island House of Representatives inside the State House. And we have a special feature today about some legislation that's being introduced. And normally we don't highlight just one particular piece of legislation and talk about it. But this legislation is so unique and so interesting, we're making an exception to that. And the gentleman that will be introducing that legislation is with us now. He's a freshman member of the Rhode Island House. He represents the community of Pawtucket. We've interviewed him before. It's certainly nice to have him back with us, Representative Carlos Tavone. Representative, it's good to see you again.
David, thank you so much for the opportunity.
And when you informed me of this special guest that you were going to have in our building today, in fact, your collective body will be recognizing him today, I said this is special enough that we must take a few minutes before session and talk about it. So before we talk about your legislation specifically, I would like to introduce our guest who is here from North Carolina by way of California, where he is now living. His name is Charles Belk. And Mr. Belk, welcome.
Thank you very much.
And when I read about you and your organization called Fitting the Description, I was really blown away when I read your story. And what I thought we would do, and it certainly would be appropriate before we talk about the specific legislation that the representative will be introducing, tell us about your organization and the event last August 2014 that precipitated this. Take your time, set the stage.
Absolutely. So Fitting Descriptions is a nonprofit organization that was established to help highlight the just countless number of kind of wrongful arrests and wrongful detentions that are going on in the country due to mistaken identity because someone fit a particular description. In my particular case, August 22nd specifically of last year, it was during Emmy weekend. I'm an independent film producer and marketing executive out in Los Angeles. I was in Beverly Hills, transitioning from one Emmy event to another one, was trying to get to a parking meter to put money in my meter, and I got asked to come to the curb by a traffic cop out there and asked me to take for my license and to sit on the curb. Long story short, I was on that curb for 45 minutes, handcuffed on one of the busiest streets, the busiest weekends in LA, all because I fit the description of a tall, bald, black male. I then got taken to this station where I was held for about 6 hours, and I was fingerprinted, photographed, not allowed a phone call, not allowed the opportunity to speak to my attorney. But I think the cap of it all is at the end of the night when I said, hey, I understand why you may think this person looked like me. I understand that you guys have probably seen video, and here's some of the description of why I'm different. And I found out that they hadn't reviewed the video at all. But once they did review the video, immediately after we talked, they said I was free to go. I was completely innocent. I was not the person. I was handed a certificate of detention. I left, went on my merry way, and a week later I found out that I actually did still have an arrest record that was on the LA Sheriff's Department website.
And there's the rub. You have this certificate of detention, and obviously you're inconvenienced, you're frustrated, but you're probably going, well, I'm glad that's at least over. But it really wasn't over.
It wasn't over at all, and that was what I think moved me to kind of push this forward, is as talking to a lot of folks, a lot of people have been in a situation where they've been detained and brought in and fingerprinted, and because it never went to court, because they were never officially charged, they thought everything was good, but indeed it is not good because you do leave there with an arrest record. And the onus is on you, that even though you were walking down the street completely innocent, a mistake was made, and mistakes happen. A mistake was made, but you leave out of that facility with that arrest record gonna follow you unless you have to do something about it.
So, Mr. Belk, did it just occur to you one day after this happened, hey, I ought to check and see exactly what it says in my file or on my record? What prompted you to learn that your fingerprints, etc., were all retained by the police department?
Quite the opposite, actually. I was going about life thinking that everything was okay, that when I left, that because they handed me this piece of paper, that I did not have to worry about it anymore. Someone was on in Los Angeles, you can go to the LA Sheriff Department site, put in a person's first and last name, and if there's a record there, it comes up. That's someone notified me a week later that I had a record on the website for the sheriff department.
So then what was your next move?
So my next move at that point was to take to what I went to the very first time they got the story out there, and that was social media. I posted it on Facebook, and amazingly enough, because this affected so many folks that it happened to before, there was an outpour of support that went into emails, phone calls to the city of Beverly Hills, to the police department, and then they called me in. And in California, to get your record expunged, they have a petition to seal and destroy an adult arrest record. They presented me with that. We signed it. They walked it through the process, and literally within 2 days, my record had disappeared. Made me started thinking that if that could happen to me, and it was happening to a lot of folks, and it's just not fair. A person shouldn't have to spend an average of $5,000 and up to 6 months getting their record erased when they had absolutely nothing to do with it.
Well, it's interesting. You used the word expunged. You were never charged.
Correct.
You were just detained. You were placed under arrest. At what point during this process, when you were being detained, did they say, hey, you fit the description of a guy that just robbed the bank?
So that's an interesting point, because they actually never said that. I didn't know until later when I was released. My attorney told me that I was being held on a $100,000 bail, and it was because of accessory to armed robbery. So I didn't know. They didn't tell me at the time. But when they released me again, they released me on the auspices that everything was okay, that I did not have an arrest record. I was not arrested.
Wow. Now, obviously, you're here from California because you're visiting lawmakers, I would presume, all over the country, because as I recall reading, you have some kind of a petition drive going.
Yeah, so once my situation got taken care of, we started a nationwide petition around hashtag auto erase. It was initially and still is addressed to the state attorney generals, because there's a policy piece of it that attorney generals can kind of each state deal with as well. But we had a legislator from Illinois that said, this is a big problem in Chicago. We want to introduce this and make it law. They got behind it, then California got behind it, and North Carolina got behind it, and Ohio got behind it. And so at that point, it seemed like the route to go was through state legislators.
And now Representative Taban, is Rhode Island going to get behind it?
Absolutely. We're the fourth state to, as of this evening, to introduce legislation.
And without giving us too much inside baseball, just the bullet points of this legislation, what will it do? What will it call for?
The simple answer is, if you are wrongfully arrested, a police or the police department has to do their due diligence, because they're looking for someone or something. The idea is not to complicate or make life harder on them. The idea behind this is, we're human beings, we can make mistakes. We're doing our job. But if someone's wrongfully arrested and they walk into the station or wherever they're being held, innocent, they feel they're innocent, and with a clean record, the idea is that they walk out innocent with a clean record. So it's an expedited process to make sure that those who are wrongfully arrested can absolutely say, I have not been arrested, whether they're applying for a house, a car, a job, whatever it may be. Because when talking to Charles, I said, give me an example, something drastic. He's like walking down the street on a Saturday, you are going to go party, you get arrested, you either spend the weekend in jail, and then on Monday, your dream job, you go, they tell you, yes, we want you. They say, go get a BCI check, and you're done. So you would have to say, I've been arrested, but I can explain. And it's like I tell everybody, everyone in jail is innocent. So,
now, did I understand you correctly? Would it only apply to people that have never been arrested before this legislation? Or if you've had a history, let's say, of criminal activity and you were once, apprehended wrongly and arrested, and they said, oh, by the way, case of mistaken identity, you're free to go. Under your legislation, would that arrest be able to be eliminated too?
We're going case by case. So in that particular case, if you're mistakenly arrested, we're going based on that one. If you have a previous record, you have a previous record. We can't do anything about that. You created that. But in that case, that's what we're focusing on.
Now, how did you come to learn about this, and what prompted you to take this action, Representative?
A few months back, I attended my first legislative conference, and Charles was there on his national crusade to educate. And after several conversations, I was amongst one of the legislators that Charles approached, and we started talking about different things, and then we embarked on this conversation, and it just made sense. Being a newer legislator, I don't know all the laws, obviously, so I was surprised that Rhode Island wouldn't have this law. And when he told me that most states in the country don't have it, if any, then I said, this is something that I believe would make sense. Rhode Island is a great representation of the rest of our country in regards to the cultural diversity and everything that we represent. So I felt that as a freshman, it's a unique opportunity for me to do something that I know is going nationwide.
And not that this would be, a precursor for eliminating you from ever being involved in a crime. Mr. Belk, I understand you have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree. You've achieved certain certifications from Harvard University. I mean, from all accounts, you're a very good citizen and a very productive citizen, but you both touched on something that's really interesting. Now with the internet, you can hire companies, firms, anybody can sign up for $1.99. You can get a complete background check on a person.
Absolutely.
So in that example you used, Rep, where you said, oh yes, I was arrested, but I can explain. How about the people that just do it on the down low and never even mention it to the potential applicant, but just automatically take their application and put it in the circular file? That's going to be a problem.
That's going to be a big problem. And that's one of the reasons why, actually, that is probably the specific reason why I'm kind of trying my best to push this legislation out as much as possible and get the word out, because one, people don't know that they still may have a record, and two, it can easily be checked if that record is still there.
Are you getting pushback from law enforcement agencies at all?
It's amazing. We have, since I've been here, one, I'm working with the Beverly Hills Police Department. They've been completely cooperative. The chief of police there, him and I did a press video statement together where they admitted the mistakes they made and the changes they're making, and he's been completely supportive of my actions. In fact, him and I are doing a sensitivity training video together that they are going to make available to all law enforcement agencies around the country. Fast forward to here in Rhode Island, we have met with the Providence Police Commission, the Providence Chief of Police. In fact, the state police chief is on board and supportive, and he's visiting today. And so we've met with the Pawtucket chief of police, and all of them say that we can't believe it exists. We completely support it, and it makes sense.
I would think also it would be championed by the ACLU as well. Who would want people to have this scarlet letter? It's something that's tantamount to a scarlet letter. Representative, have you had a chance to talk to many of your colleagues? Have you gotten feedback from the people you share the House of Representatives with?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, luckily yesterday there was a big gathering, and Charles had flown in early on, and the welcoming was unbelievable. I spoke to several of them. I had been talking to them about it briefly. I said, I'm putting something together. I think that it's going to be unique but special. And when yesterday I introduced them and I introduced the author, it all came together. And because it made national news at the time, when he took out his card that shows the picture of what happened, they're like, I remember that. I remember that. Of course, sign me on. And like Charles said, the last thing that I wanted to do was to get any police officer, chief, or our state police colonel maybe agitated with me, saying, he's taking on this crusade on his own. So I did my due diligence. I reached out to all of them. I showed them the language. I told them why, I thought it was important. And luckily we've had, they're all on board.
Well, obviously this problem, Mr. Belk, I hope it didn't detain you too long that you didn't make the red carpet at the Emmy Awards.
So I did miss the party that night, but I did make the Emmy Awards the next night.
Well, now, give our viewers, is there a place online where they can log in, a URL address where people can go to get more information or participate in your online petition?
Absolutely. So the easiest address is fittingthedescription.org. That's the URL. We also have a Facebook page, Fitting the Description, and that gives you the link to the online petition, which is a change.org online petition. That's important because it's great to have legislators excited for introducing an estate. It's equally important to show that the people understand what's going on and how it's affecting them, because the whole goal is to educate about this whole process.
Well, props to you, Mr. Belk, for taking the initiative to see this through, that not only did you rectify your problem, but now you're going to possibly help solve this problem with countless thousands of other people across the fruited plain. I wish you continued success, and thank you for your dedication and service.
Thank you.
And Representative Tabone will be closely watching your legislation as it moves through the process. It's certainly fascinating, and I think you've got a winner here, and congratulations for taking this bull by the horns and doing something with it, and maybe Rhode Island will take its rightful place in making sure this doesn't happen to our citizens as well. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, David.
And of course, as I mentioned, we'll continue to follow this particular piece of legislation and report back on it. We're coming to you this day from the lounge of the Rhode Island House of Representatives. For Capitol Television, I'm Dave Barber.